This episode is brought to you by Strength Portal. You need a single software platform that enables your trainers to deliver consistent, high-quality workouts, track client progress, and scale your business. The problem is you're still using pen and paper or basic spreadsheets to run your business, which leads to poor client experiences, inaccurate tracking, and prevents you from growing your business, making you feel frustrated. Strength Portal understand your challenge and have worked closely with the HIIT industry to create a software platform to manage and scale your niche business. You can integrate with MindBody, manage a standardized exercise and workout library for your team, track workouts effectively, and produce client reports at the click of a button. Strength Portal is used by multiple businesses in the high-intensity strength training community, namely Discover Strength, Smart Strength Austin, MedX Precision Fitness, and more. Starting with Strength Portal is super simple. Number 1, sign up for the best package for your business. Number 2, let Strength Portal take the load off and help onboard your business onto the platform. And number 3, start delivering consistent workout experiences and scale your business to the next level. To help support the podcast, please go to strengthportal.com/high intensity business and sign up now so you can stop feeling frustrated about your business and start to scale your business to its true potential. Go to strengthportal.com/high intensity business. Lawrence Neal here, and welcome back to High Intensity Business, the podcast where we discuss high-intensity strength training and provide you with the tools, the tactics, and the strategies to help you grow your strength training business. This is episode 385 and part 12 of the High-Intensity Training Fundamentals series. The focus of today's podcast is going to be on the ideal exercise environment, which is something that I don't think has ever been discussed on this podcast in any detail. Even after 380 episodes, it's still something which really yet to sink my teeth into with a guest. And I'm excited today to really just focus on this with Tim Ryan. Tim is a master super slow instructor and owner of Strong Life Personal Training in Barrington, Illinois. You can contact Tim, to learn all about his services to studio owners and personal trainers, including workshops, mentoring, and seminars, and to help you improve your personal training operation and just help you grow your fitness business. And you can find out all about that if you contact Tim over at stronglifetraining.com, or you can email Tim at info@stronglifetraining.com as well. Tim, thanks for coming back to the podcast to talk about this.
Thank you, Lawrence. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to do this because, as I said there, I don't think I've done an in-depth podcast on this topic. Now, it's definitely come up in conversation. I know Luke and I have talked about it briefly, Luke Carlson, CEO of Discover Strength, but I've not done something really in-depth on it. So I'm excited about this. So do you want to just kick off by explaining kind of where this concept comes from, and we'll go from there?
Yeah, well, this is kind of a very interesting topic because, as you pointed out, we've not really discussed this before. You haven't had any really podcasts devoted to this. So it's great to be able to talk about this today. And, as far as where it comes from, a lot of people have advocated for this over the years, but like a lot of things associated with some of the stuff we talk about, Ken Hutchins of Super Slow fame was a big advocate, or it is a big advocate of this, and he wrote about it extensively in his Super Slow technical manual. He's big on pushing for a lot of these concepts that we're about to discuss. So want to give credit where credit is due, just like Absolutely. The exercise first recreation concept, Ken is big on this ideal exercise environment. So, but at any rate, I'm sure this is a topic that people have, differing opinions on, and some people may be more into this than others. But like a lot of the things that I talk about and we've discussed is, I view this from sort of a perspective of trying to create the ultimate, training environment. And, sometimes people let their personal preferences, kind of get into things where it may not be conducive to having the ideal environment, but maybe somebody likes one thing or another, for example, music or whatever. different things. But again, I'm kind of viewing this from sort of how I view this whole methodology and this whole protocol, and that is just trying to create the ultimate training experience and get the absolute most out of the program and best results that we can get. So I think the environment that you train in is very important for that. And basically, when you think of this concept, we're trying to create the situation so that you can have the ultimate in concentration and mental focus, and sort of be free from distractions and free from various impediments that would hinder your training in one way or another. So that's kind of the perspective that we're coming from. And when you think about some of these things, even from the standpoint of why we create a personal training studio rather than doing personal training in a big box gym or a big health club and athletic club type of thing. Obviously there's advantages to being in a studio, and a lot of these come from this concept of the ideal environment, is that the studio is a better environment for doing personal training than a big crowded facility with a lot of activity going on. So at any rate, with that kind of stuff in mind, probably the first aspect of creating the ITIL environment is creating privacy for the client and for the training. And by this, I mean, just, it doesn't mean you have to be, exclusive, just one client and one trainer in the room and nobody else there, because let's face it, from a business perspective, that's hard to be able to generate enough income if you limit it to just one client and one trainer in the room. But, when we talk about privacy, it just means that you should be respectful for the client and create a situation where you can work with them without a lot of distractions or without a lot of other people around and things that would intrude on the privacy of your work with the client. And I know
just one interjection on that.
Sure.
I'm just curious. Does Ken, now I will confess, I've not read the Superstar Technical Manual. I'm yet to acquire a copy for a reasonable price point, but I'm trying.
Yeah.
Although I think there might be some online now that are really affordable. Anyway, the way he describes it in it, is he actually focused on the private one-on-one setting? So would the original idea of the ideal exercise environment be completely private? So not even another trainer with another client in the same space?
Yeah, I don't think necessarily he insists on that. Just
okay. Just wonder if there's a differing view there between you and him on that. That's all.
Yeah. I think it's more from a standpoint. I've never heard him necessarily advocate that you can't have another trainer or another client in the room. So it's more from the standpoint of just creating an environment where you do have some respectful, amount of privacy for the client to train, not be interrupted by other clients, or, a lot of people are self-conscious, okay? Especially people that don't have a lot of experience with exercise and are not comfortable with their bodies, perhaps. And, I've had many people come into me, and one of the things that draws them is the studio type environment, that they don't feel comfortable going into a big crowded fitness center and type of situation where there's a lot of people around. And sometimes that's because they feel like everybody else there knows what they're doing and they don't, or something, so but also just the privacy that they don't feel comfortable from a body standpoint to be around what they perceive as all these fit people or whatever.
Yeah,
even though we know that there's many people that are not in great shape at health clubs and fitness centers, but anyway, so this idea of the privacy is just as I said, not necessarily being the only person in the room, but having a situation where you can work with the client, that they can feel that they're not being watched, that people are not breathing down their neck and too close proximity and so forth, so that you've got enough space and not so crowded that there's just a lot of activity going around and too much action, or different distractions that may be getting in the way of that. Okay, so I think you can certainly have multiple trainers in the room, multiple clients at the same time, as long as you've got enough space and got enough equipment to accommodate that type of situation. So that's important, and this ties in with sort of the next concept, that you need to have an environment that's free from distractions, that's quiet and focused, and being able to not have things going on that are going to distract people from their concentration and their focus on the exercise. And this kind of, I want to address first off that we all know, people that do this, we all understand that high intensity strength training is very physically challenging and very physically demanding activity. And particularly to concentrate not just on your overall performance or your efforts, but to concentrate on all the various aspects of proper form and technique and performance of the exercises in a correct way. This takes a lot of mental concentration. You cannot do this in a mindless type of way. Like if you're out, kind of walking or jogging, or you're pedaling away on a bike, to some degree, that's sort of just automatic activity that you get in a groove and you just are automatically, can do that. And you can perhaps, be thinking about other things. And, a lot of people use this as a way to, de-stress and clear their mind, and maybe listen to music and do these kind of things. But when it comes
to audio book, or this is the thing, is that a lot of people come from an aerobics background. Let's say they come from an aerobics background into strength training, into high intensity training. So they might be akin to running, cycling, doing steady state with an audio book or music, or I don't know, like they're using it to de-stress, but more, to be more specific, they might be using it to solve a problem in their work or personal life in their head. Whereas there is a de-stressing quality to high intensity training. We know that. We know it reduces psychological stress, but in a very different kind of way.
Yeah. I mean, it's more with the strength training. It's more of one of the end results that you get from it, rather than something you do. Like, as you pointed out, you can do things with sort of cardio or steady state activity that you can't necessarily do with high intensity strength training, because high intensity strength training really does require all of your thoughts, all of your attention, all of your focus on the various details if you're going to get the most out of it, and from a lot of different perspectives. As I said, from an effort level, to be able to force your body to exert at that high of a level, and to engage, a meaningful resistance, and to perform with the proper technique and all of these things. So it really does require every thought sort of being held captive to what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And you can't do it in a mindless manner. So you need to have an environment that is quiet and focused and free from distractions. Okay, so number one, some people may disagree with this, but the idea of playing music in the exercise room, in my opinion, is a big no-no. Now I've heard all the arguments. Oh, well, it motivates me, and it fires me up, or this, that, or the other thing. And to me, it's just a big distraction that I can't concentrate on what I'm doing if I'm trying to listen to music at the same time, or if there's just this background noise. And this idea of sort of quiet and focus, it's not just music. I mean, you also don't want a bunch of conversation going on, and you don't want to have all these people around that are talking or having a conversation, or you need to even be respectful from the standpoint that if there are other trainers and clients in the room, that they're being respectful of those around them and sort of keeping their voice under control. I mean, obviously there's going to be instruction going on from other trainers, and there may be conversation and interaction between trainers and clients going on, but you should be doing all of this in such a way to be respectful of the other clients in the room that are training, and try to do it in a way that is as unobtrusive as possible and non-distracting as possible. So this concept would kind of pertain to a lot of areas, whether it be the music, whether it be any kind of other background noise, whether it be other people in the room. One thing that's very distracting is if, you're in the room training, or if I'm in the room training with my client and another trainer and client are in the room, and that other trainer and client are just yakking away, having a conversation, laughing, joking, talking about their weekend or, whatever may be going on. All of that stuff is highly distracting from the client that's trying to focus and concentrate.
And just to pause on that for a second, I think this is really, really good stuff. It made me think of, Discover Strength, right, who are probably doing the highest volume of anyone on their training floor in terms of doing multiple one-on-ones and multiple groups all at the same time. But I'm sure this is something they address in their with their staff. It's getting that balance right. It's making sure that the volume, the noise is mostly really great coaching, really great instruction, really great encouragement where necessary. But you're not going to probably find two trainers having a conversation about something non-work related in earshot of the training floor and the clients. So it totally makes sense, but it's obviously important to get that balance right. Like you can have some noise, but it's got to be noise with a purpose, right? Like I said, like instruction, right? And I don't believe they have music on their training floor. I could be wrong about that. But yeah, it made me realize that you can make this ideal exercise environment work from a noise perspective, even with a busy training floor.
Yeah. And, my experience with, witnessing, whatever goes on at Discover Strength. I mean, I've visited several of their facilities, during the REC conference type of thing, and I've observed them actually training some clients. And then, of course, also with the sort of early morning workouts that they conduct. Now, the early morning workouts, that can be somewhat chaotic because you may have literally 20 people, working out at the same time. And no matter how you do it, there's going to be a lot of noise in the room. But
did you go through the early morning workout the last time you went?
Pardon?
Did you go through the early morning workout yourself last time you were there?
No, I didn't.
Damn.
And, honestly, the reason that I didn't do that is that it is far too much activity and too much going on in the room for my personal taste. I didn't want to do a workout under those kind of conditions and stuff. And, but I did go there and observe what was going on. And obviously that can be somewhat chaotic, but that's a different situation than what they're doing when they're working with clients. I mean, I've seen some of their facilities where maybe there's 3 or 4 clients in the room training, and it's a much different, situation. And I think you're right. As long as if you're doing it in such a way where there may be some activity going on, but if it's all focused on the workout and people, directing all of that towards their workout, that's different than if you've got somebody just yakking away and laughing and carrying on a conversation or something like that, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think the whole thing is that, it ideally, I don't believe there should be music played. And then as much as possible, the environment should be quiet and focused and distraction free. And really keep, number one, your instruction to the client should be, directed at what they're doing. And you don't have to be, yelling and barking orders to the clients. You can be giving them sort of calm and focused type of instruction. And another aspect is the client should, for various reasons, the client should not be moaning and groaning and screaming out and, doing those type of histrionics of things, because that can be very distractive. I mean, I've seen a situation where if you've got a couple people in the room and one client is just really moaning and groaning and screaming as they're trying to complete reps, that almost stimulates the other client to start doing the same thing, and they sort of feed off of each other, and that can become a problem. So that stuff should be kept to a minimum. But there's other reasons for that, because too, if you're moaning and groaning and screaming out, you're not breathing correctly either. So there's other reasons for not doing that. But this whole concept just centers around eliminating those distractions. And in regard to those distractions, other things that would be a big no-no, especially maybe difficult in today's day and age, is that clients should not be bringing their phones into the room with them. You can't be in the middle of a workout and having phones ringing and clients, pausing their workout to answer their phone or to check a text message or, something of that nature. That's all just going to be disruptive to the workout. Distract other clients. And, I've got a client now that tries to bring two cell phones into the room with her. One is a business phone and one is her personal phone, and she tries to bring them both in, and, they're either both going off or they're dinging with text messages. And then she wants to stop and see who just text messaged her. And I had to tell her, get these out of here. This is not appropriate.
Well, let me ask you this, and I think this is a really good point, because we're guilty of this. We actually have some clients who will stop to check their phones, and we need to put a stop to that. And my business, so I was saying to my business partner, we need to get cubby holes. We need to get some cubby holes for the waiting area, so that people can put their belongings in there. And I think we'll definitely do that, because there's things like jackets and other things, water bottles, whatever they might have, which it needs somewhere to put that, right? And he was of the view, no, clients can just leave all their stuff in the car and come in. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't know. I guess I'm thinking more about good customer service, and I feel like it's maybe some people won't drive here, so they haven't got somewhere to leave their stuff and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we were talking about, obviously, regarding the phones, like put the phone in the cubby hole. But if the phone goes in the cubby hole, it should be silent or in airplane mode, right? Or it should just be left in the car. And you've motivated me to actually create a real strict policy here, because not only does it distract the client, but when we get busier and we've got multiple clients on the floor, which currently at the moment we don't, we usually just have one in at the moment. And as we grow, that will change. But it will, like you say, start to distract other customers, which will be a real problem. So yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you for that.
Yeah. And I think either way can work. I mean, maybe ultimately it'd be great if they just left it in the car and out of sight, out of mind, and just, completely do away with it. But, the cubbies or, some sort of locker situation could work just fine. But as you pointed out, have the phone on silent mode so that they're not dinging or the phone's not ringing and that kind of stuff. And regardless of the silent mode or not, the client shouldn't be running over to the cubby and checking for text messages, in between their exercises or something.
Yeah. 30 minutes of pure focus.
Right.
Zen. Yeah.
Right. because let's face it too, let's not create unnecessary stress. This is hard enough to be doing a high intensity workout. Don't be thinking about work or running to check messages or trying to respond to messages. All of this stuff is just going to take away from your workout. And then you're, on the middle of an exercise and you're thinking about that text message, or you're thinking about, a meeting at work, or, something like that. It's just, the idea is to get this stuff out of your mind, clear your mind, focus, concentrate, create an environment where it's free from distractions, not only for the client that's training, but being respectful of those other clients in the room. So, trainers need to be aware that, particularly when there's other trainers and clients in the room, just pay attention to how you're using your voice and what you're saying, and just keep it directed at what needs to be, and keep the control of your voice so that you're being respectful of everyone around you.
Yeah, I love how, if I remember rightly, the way Discover Strength sort of frame this up for a client experience is, right, there'll be other trainers and there'll be other clients in the room, but what you got to create is to make the client feel like they are just in a bubble with you as a trainer. That's what that's the experience you're trying to create. So that's quite a nice guide or heuristic for behavior during that session. Yeah.
And I will, just some other little tips on this and things. Yeah. If I'm in an environment where there's another trainer, and let's say they happen to end up on a machine right next to where I am with my client, my trainer, I will, sometimes, depending on what's going on and so forth, I may create a wall of privacy between myself and the other client and trainer by, standing between them, to, as I say, just kind of create a wall of privacy, and to make sure that the client is not paying attention to that other client and trainer, and is just aware that I'm there, and I'm trying to do whatever I can to kind of create the situation where they're not being distracted by that other person. I know a few people that have created an environment where they kind of have these curtains, where they pull a curtain between two machines, so that they create more of a physical barrier, between the machines and between another client and their trainer, or something like that. I mean, that's something that could be considered, but that gets kind of complicated to be hanging all these curtains between every machine or something like that. But I've seen a couple people that have done that, particularly in smaller environments. But that can be done in various ways. So, kind of an overall view of this concept is just any kind of distraction is potentially a detriment from, in a fashion of causing a client to lose their concentration, to lose their focus, for their mind to be wandering. And any of those things is going to take away that input and potentially affect their performance on the exercise. Okay.
Yeah, got
it. So another aspect here, as we kind of move on through this, so we've got so far a private environment, sort of a quiet, focused, distraction-free environment, whether it be from other people, phones, all that kind of stuff.
Before we move on from distractions, to make sure I add one more in here. There's a really good article, which I believe Doug McGuff wrote on the website advancedrejuvenation.us.us. And I'll link to that from the blog post, because it goes into even more detail. Well, we've been pretty detailed, but even more detail than we have on this podcast. So I'll link that up in the show notes, episode 385. But one of the things that made me laugh is he talked, I'm sorry to digress a little bit here, Tim, but one of the things he talked about, which made me laugh, was children being in the workout area. Now, currently, I train my fiance in the studio on a Sunday, and we have to bring our kids because we don't have any family here, and it's hard to find someone to look after them. We need to, though. And one of them will be Maggie, who's will be a year soon. She's basically sat on the floor on like a blanket, and Arthur is 2.5, so he's running around, and it's dangerous, right? There's machines, there's weight plates. And it's funny because this article that Doug wrote literally is just absolutely hits a nail on the head as regards to my experience with the kids. So can you imagine this, Tim? I've got Ash, my fiance, on a machine. I'm trying to train her, and I'm also trying to look after these kids at the same time. And Doug makes a really powerful point that the sound of a child crying or making any sort of noise is like the most distracting thing to a woman, or probably to an adult there is, because we're wired to respond to those signals, right? That's like the ultimate distraction in a personal training studio. And I was training her, and we got through the workout, and at the end of it, I was so stressed and I was so annoyed because I couldn't deliver a great experience and she kept getting interrupted, that I just said to her, next time we do this, we have to have someone with us, like we're a friend or a family member, to either look after the kids, like maybe drop them off somewhere, or at least just to be there and keep them occupied, which I know isn't perfect. But yeah, just another thing I thought I'd just mention, because I have personal experience with that distraction being a killer. So that can't happen. I mean, I'm sure no one's advocating that their clients bring kids, but we've had that happen. We've had a client bring their kid before, and maybe that's not okay, but it's sort of okay in the beginning, but as we get busier, that's not going to be viable. Not if they're being distracting. So anyway, that's just some thoughts on that. Please go on.
I mean, that's an awesome point. And that was one of the things I had on my list to address, is this concept of, babies or kids being in the room.
Oh, okay.
And just as you pointed out, it's incredibly distracting, but it can be dangerous too, because especially if the kids, not just a baby in a stroller or something sitting there confined, but somebody that can run around the room and stick their hands in machines, or, be running in front of the person that's training. I mean, I obviously, from a business perspective, this would be a huge no-no, that the kids should not be in the room, babies should not be in the room, any of that kind of stuff. You shouldn't be allowing clients to do that. In your situation that you describe, I mean, if you're kind of the only ones there, and it's you and your fiance, and you've got no other way. I mean, and it's either that or not train, maybe you have to kind of put up with it. But certainly shouldn't be something that you're doing as a business practice or allowing to happen. And even from your perspective, as you've pointed out, try to find some way to get somebody to be with you to watch the kids or whatnot, and kind of contain that, so that can free you up to concentrate on what you're doing and you not have to be responding to that type of stuff.
It's like halfway through the leg press and one of them screaming for a snack or something, and you have to jump off the leg press.
Right. And also, God forbid if they got really upset and started screaming and crying and, a temper tantrum or something.
Oh, we're in the process of bartering for childcare in return for free personal training. So that's something I'm working on.
Here's another good one, though. And, I think of stories that Ken Hutchins, has told me, and things that went on, like, say, during the famous Nautilus osteoporosis project that he kind of supervised. But the idea that if other people walk into the room, whether that be other clients or other staff members or whatever, you really don't want a situation where somebody enters the room, the training room, and then starts trying to interact with other people. Like I've seen things where, depending on how the facility is set up and whether the restrooms or the changing areas, sometimes clients may have to walk through the training area to get to the back and go to the restroom, or to, get back to the changing areas. And clients would walk through the room, and somebody's in the middle of an exercise, and that client that's walking through the room is trying to interact. And they from their perspective, they're trying to just be friendly, and they may say, "Hey, Joe, how's it going over there?" Or whatever. And all of a sudden they startle the client, and they create a big distraction by walking through the room. So, Ken used to tell me that during the osteoporosis project, that Ken and his wife would be, in this clinically controlled, ideal exercise environment, trying to really focus on their clients and get the client to focus. And one of the other doctors or researchers at the University of Florida who, don't understand and respect the need for this ideal environment would sometimes walk through the room and try to interact with everybody and, hey, how's it going? And, talk loud and, interrupt Ken, with his client and do these kinds of things. And that would just, be a huge no-no. So I think you have to consider that with your clients that, sometimes you just have clients that are just really social and really talkative and they're friendly and they want to try to interact with everybody there. And, they walk through the room and they try to, say different things and just interact with people and they're being disruptive. So
let's go. This episode is brought to you by Strength Portal. You need a software platform that enables you to track workouts, deliver consistent high-quality client experiences, and scale your business. The problem is you're still using pen and paper or basic spreadsheets to run your business, which leads to inconsistent workout experiences and stifles your business growth, making you feel frustrated. Strength Portal have worked closely with the HIIT industry to create a software platform to manage and scale your niche business. Strength Portal is used by multiple businesses in the high-intensity strength training community, namely Discover Strength, Smart Strength Austin, MedX Precision Fitness, and more. To help support the podcast, go to strengthportal.com/high-intensity business and sign up for your ideal package now. That's strengthportal.com/high-intensity business. And now back to the episode. Let's go.
I can see this being a real challenge for us. The Irish are so friendly and can be so talkative. They're like a very, very likable people for that reason. It's so easy to talk to them and have a great conversation. But us British are a little bit more reserved, I'd say. Maybe we're not so bad. But we're not reserved about other things. But we can. That's a whole other podcast. But yeah, it's a challenge I can see happening with us actually, and it's something that we need to learn to overcome and create policies around. And I'm sure we'll be fine, and we'll get some understanding that the clients need focus, they need privacy. But I think one of our challenges is we have one big open space, right? It'd be ideal if you had some partition spaces, like you had a separate waiting room where some small talk could take place, right? Away from the actual training floor. Just some thoughts.
Yeah. And this brings up a good point is that when you are setting out to design your studio, your facility, ideally you would have a situation where the training area is completely separated from the rest of the facility, preferably by a door. So you can block any sound that's coming from the lobby or the waiting area or whatever. But also have a layout where ideally you don't have to walk through the training area to get to the restroom or to get to a changing area, that stuff would be up front. So when people come in, they can go to the changing area, go to the restroom, be in the lobby or the waiting area, and have that area be separated from the training room. As I say, ideally by a door, but if not by a door, at least separated enough that it's not going to create a distraction when people are coming in and when people are waiting. And this is difficult because a lot of times when you go to rent space in a building, they will, sort of put the restrooms are already built at the back of the room. So, obviously you have the waiting area up front and then you have your training area. And it just so happens that it's unavoidable that the restrooms are in the back. And the only way to get to the restroom is to walk through the training area. So that can be, that's less than ideal. So, if you can find a way, if you have any flexibility to how the facility is sort of built out, is you try to create a situation where restrooms, changing areas, lobby, whatever is up front, and the training room is at the back and it's separated from all of that. But
I guess
It's not always possible.
one way of looking at this is it's almost like a checklist, right? And if you can get 80% of it, you're doing quite well, because for instance, layout, not everyone's going to have the luxury of being able to have the ideal layout, right?
Yeah.
So I do think like having, one more question I have is having the ultimate ideal exercise environment can be difficult. And just being able to get as close to that as possible is a good achievement.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe
I've certainly, I've been in several different facilities over the years, and even moving my business and being in different types of buildings and different types of facilities, and I've not always had everything, every aspect perfect. I've had situation where the restrooms are in the back and clients got to walk through to go to the restroom and change their clothes, and I've had situations where I just couldn't maybe get the waiting area as separate from the training area as I would have liked. And, you're not always able to accomplish everything on the list, but, there's ways that you can, at least minimize problems. You can just teach your clients that when they walk through the room, be as quiet and unobtrusive as possible. Try not to interact with anybody that's training. Just kind of quietly go to the back of the room, use the restroom, change your clothes or whatever, and then go back up to the front and wait in the waiting area, that kind of thing. So you can mitigate some of this stuff, but you're right. You're not always going to necessarily be able to have everything perfect the way you'd like it. And you just have to, but first you have to be aware of all these things and just be aware of creating, as much of the ideal environment as you can. And since there's so many different things, I mean, we could sit here and kind of come up with more and more examples of things that are distracting or things that cause hindrances. But if you have the mindset that ideally you want as much quiet and distraction-free environment as possible, then anything that disrupts that and causes any kind of a distraction or any kind of a opportunity for clients to lose their concentration and focus or be hindered in their workout in any way, you would try to eliminate as many of those as possible and just, continue to create this environment that just minimizes all of those types of things.
I'm curious because we've got obviously another thing we've got to cover is temperature and maybe equipment. Yeah. But what do you have on you? Do you have a list there of things you want to cover, or I have a list here, but I'm happy to go with yours.
Yeah, I think the next thing that I would want to cover is the temperature.
Go for it.
So part of the ideal environment is creating the right temperature and having sort of a well-ventilated space where not only is it not too hot, but also that you have decent airflow and not, a lot of humidity and things like that. So, the thing to keep in mind here is that exercise, body produces heat. All of that work produces heat. And ideally, you want to make sure that the client does not get too hot. And ideally, should not really be sweating during workouts, because sweating sign is to your body overheating. Sweating is your body's method of trying to cool itself down and release heat. So sweating occurs when the body cannot purge the heat, fast enough through the environment, and that sweating occurs to kind of help with the purging of that heat. So ideally, there should not even be any sweating going on, because you don't want the person to get so hot that sweating occurs. So the room temperature needs to be pretty cool. Now, this is another area where it may not be possible to get it as cool as you'd like, but ideally, I think the temperature should be down near 60 degrees or the lower 60s. Now you're in Celsius, so I don't know what that would be in Celsius.
I'm just going to convert it quick.
Yeah.
Was it 60 Fahrenheit to Celsius? 15 degrees Celsius. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So ideally, I think somewhere down there around 60, or as you say, 15 Celsius would be kind of ideal to make it cool enough that as the body produces that heat, that is being simultaneously cooled with the environment, and you're not producing any overheating and sweating and that type of stuff. But the other aspect is that being in a cool environment actually enables you to work at a higher level. Okay. Excessive heat production, or the body building up too much heat, is actually a hindrance and decreases performance. So in a hot environment, you will have a poorer performance than you will in a cool environment. Okay. So this isn't just merely preventing overheating, but also trying to create an environment that is going to be conducive to getting the best possible performance. So that real cool environment is going to lead to better, higher level performances, and stop, that excessive heat production that's going to hinder performance. So now, with that said, many times it's hard to get that environment that cool unless you have a special, air conditioning system or something that can do that. Because most air conditioning systems, I think they're designed to reduce the temperature by around 20 degrees from what it is outside. So if it's 80 degrees outside, it might be able to get the temperature down to 60. But if it's 90 degrees outside, and again, I'm talking Fahrenheit here. So if it's 90 degrees outside, maybe the system can only get it down to around 70 or 68 or something like that. So sometimes that's difficult. In my facility, my arrangement can keep a very constant 64 degrees. Okay. So I've been very successful that no matter how hot it is outside, I can keep my exercise room at around 64 degrees, which is pretty decent. I wouldn't mind it being a little cooler, but it can stay a pretty solid 64 degrees, and that's not too bad. I don't notice, a lot of problem with that. But I have been in facilities where, maybe the size of an air conditioning unit that I had in a particular building just wasn't keeping up as well as I'd like to. And sometimes on real hot days, the temperature would creep up to 67 or 68 degrees. And I would notice that would actually hinder performance a bit, and people would get a little bit too hot. And even my own personal workouts, that would be too hot, and that was not ideal. So
I hate working out when it's really hot and to this level of intensity. It's not nice at all, is it?
A little sidebar story. Yeah. Back when I started my very first facility, I had a partner, and we were so excited to get our equipment that we had sort of bought our equipment before we actually had our facility, and we had, maybe about 8 different machines that we purchased, and the equipment got delivered before our facility was ready. So we had to we stored it in my partner's father's garage. And this happened to be over the winter when this equipment arrived. So we put all the equipment in the garage, and it was an unheated garage. So, in the winter, it would get pretty cold. But we were so excited that we wanted to be able to train on our equipment while we waited for our facility to be, built out. So we had these machines in the garage, and we'd go in and we'd get a workout out there, and it would be, maybe 45 or 50 degrees, in the garage, and obviously very cold if you're just in there. But we would do the workouts, and we had some of the best workouts I've ever had in my life, because once you get going, that it almost encouraged you to work hard. I mean, it was like
you want to heat up.
Yeah, you would heat up, and when you're getting in when you're into that workout and you're working extremely hard, you certainly were not too hot in that type of environment, even though it would be cold just to be in there, standing around doing nothing. But doing the workout that produced some of the best workouts ever, because it was so cool in there that you kept that cool body temperature and avoided any excess heat production. And just being in that cold environment, it was something about really stimulating your body to work hard. So this is an important concept, to have a pretty cool temperature in the training room.
This is great, Tim. We've got more to cover, and I'm sorry to say we're going to have to do a part 2 on ideal exercise environment alone. I did say, didn't I? I knew it was going to be a good one.
Yeah.
And when's your hard stop, sir? I should have checked with you before we got recording.
Yeah, I'm free. I got maybe 20 more minutes, but I don't know what your situation is.
Yeah, I've got about 10 or 15 more minutes, so that's good, because I just wanted to talk about temperature a little bit more with you, and then we'll wrap up. So, this again, my own story about this, not so much a story, but just information about this for our situation might be interesting to listeners. So we've got a space that's about 1,400 square feet, and it's in a big kind of industrial building with a very sort of cavernous space and a high ceiling. It's like a hangar, right? Is how I would describe it, but a little bit nicer than like an airplane hangar. And we I think we got a quote or a rough cost for HVAC, so heating, ventilation, air conditioning. For anyone who doesn't know what that stands for, because I didn't, and it would cost something like 10 grand to get a system installed that would be able to control the temperature for that volume of space, because of the high ceiling as well.
Yeah.
And so that's really not the kind of investment we want to make at this stage. Now, fortunately for us, Galway can be very cold, especially with the wild Atlantic winds. And so most of the year, we don't really have a problem with temperature. If anything, we need to make sure we've got a little radiator by the administrative desk for someone who's sitting there working, so they don't freeze to death. But this summer, we've actually had a pretty hot summer for Ireland, and it's been a real problem, because we've had clients who are really working up a sweat and it's just too hot. So we bought a load of fans, and we have all these fans on people. Like on the leg press, I have a fan like either side of me, right? Like blowing on me. But it's still, in my opinion, not quite enough and not quite optimal, not to mention the logistical nightmare of pulling around fans with cables all over the place. Now, I know some of our colleagues, maybe yourself, Tim, will have fixed fans above machines. I know a couple of people do that, so obviously you don't have to move that fan. But then there comes an issue with if you move a machine or the fan's fixed, whatever. So it's something that we need to address definitely in the future. But what do you think about that? Have you got any thoughts about that setup? Is there any tips you have to optimize temperature?
I'm glad you brought this up, because it was something that I wanted to address. So number one, when you're thinking of the HVAC unit, as you mentioned,
HVAC.
Its ability to cool the room, it depends on the total volume of the room and the total volume of the air in the room. And these facilities, like you described, where it's either like a warehouse or even just in a facility with a big high ceiling, obviously you're creating a much more volume of air that needs to be cooled. So that will require a bigger unit to be able to keep up with that, versus maybe you had a situation where the ceiling was lower and now you've got a lower volume and there's not as much air to cool. So that has to be factored in terms of the size of the unit that you need relative to, and there's calculations that professionals will do to calculate the volume and how much load there is and what it's going to take to cool down that size space. I've got a friend.
Not to mention the energy costs. I mean, I don't know if it's the same in the US right now. I'm guessing it is. It's the same everywhere, right? Cost of living is going up everywhere. Cost of energy is so high. That's another thing to factor into this, isn't it? Go ahead. Sorry.
No, and that's going to be, it's not only going to require a bigger unit, but it's going to take more, energy costs to keep cooling that. But I had a friend who was an ultimate sort of OCD perfectionist about some of this stuff, and he had a facility where he went out, and I don't know how much he spent, but it was something outrageous where he spent like 30 or 40,000 to have, a company come in and design like the ultimate cooling. Like he said he wanted to get this down to like 58 or 60 degrees. And he purchased this super high powered unit special system that was specifically designed to get the room that cool. And, most people are not going to go to that level, but,
is this someone I know, Tim? I know you want to keep them anonymous. I appreciate that.
No, I don't think he's, I don't think it's anybody you would know. But,
okay.
Regardless.
I love it.
Yeah. But, obviously some people can go to great lengths to kind of create this type of a cool environment. And, most of us, as you've pointed out, it just gets prohibitively expensive to try to put that much into doing that. And maybe you just don't have the opportunity to do something like that. But all of this matters. But this leads to the next thing with this idea of the fans. And that is that, especially when you can't create the environment that's maybe quite as cool as you would like it to be, the fans are definitely going to be a necessity to try to at least blow some air on the client and keep them cool in that way, because that can definitely improve things. And, there's different ways of doing this. You could either just have a number of fans sort of mounted on the wall and strategically placed and pointed at machines and different things. But that's probably not that would help from an overall standpoint, like with just air circulation. So having fans around the room and just blowing the air around the room, that helps kind of circulate the air, and it can to some degree just help circulating that cool air, that it's getting evenly distributed all over the room, and that can be helpful. But you may also need some more fans specifically directed exactly right at the client while they're on a machine. Okay, so in that case, you're going to have some portable fans. And as you pointed out, you run into problem with these cords running all over and having to maybe pick up the fan and move it from machine
Health and
to
safety
machine.
nightmare, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and it does get to be a problem. If it's just you and you're the only trainer in the room, it's not as bad. Or if there's just one other trainer in the room, and it's maybe not as bad. But if you're Discover Strength and you got 6 trainers and 6 clients going, and everybody's trying to carry fans all over the room,
I don't think they use fans, do they? They just have really good temperature control, I think.
I don't think they do, but just
plus Minneapolis is chilly anyway, right?
Yeah. So at any rate, I do think you need some fans. And a good point to bring up at this point, if you've ever had clients get sort of nauseous or lightheaded from a high intensity workout, which can sometimes happen, a lot of times that's a symptom of sort of heat stress, okay? That not only does your body sweat to purge the heat, but if you get too hot, you will also vomit to purge. So getting a little nauseous, lightheaded, that kind of a feeling, that could be associated with the client getting too hot. And I've seen situations where when that's going on, if you put a fan right on that client, that kind of shuts down that nauseous feeling fairly quick. So I do think fans are helpful. Overall, one of the things I think fans does is it creates a little bit of sort of white noise. If you got a facility where it's all quiet and there's no music playing and all of that, it can get a little too eerily quiet or maybe echoey if there's literally no sound. But if you've got some fans kind of whirling and so forth, that creates just a little bit of kind of non-distracting white noise.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Kind of takes the edge off that, quiet environment just a little. But certainly having those fans to help aid in the cooling down. So that can be helpful. So, as much as possible, if you can do it in such a way where maybe you've got, depending on how large your room is, maybe 3 or 4 fans that are strategically placed around the room with long enough cords where you can pick it up and move it to different machines and direct it at the client and keep them, keep that cool air blowing on them as much as possible while they're training. That's certainly something that can help mitigate some of this. But one other thing you brought up is that, certainly trying to keep the room really, really cool during the summer months, particularly if you're in an area where it gets very hot and humid, that can run up your electric costs or utility costs trying to run the air conditioner that much. But on the downside, in the winter, again, if you're in a place that gets cold in the winter, during the winter, your heating costs are going to be much lower, because in some ways, depending on your facility, you might be able to either turn the heat way down so that it doesn't run very much and it just keeps it at that, minimal temperature. Or I've seen situations where even turning the heat off, you just sort of get enough heat, ambiently from, if there's other businesses in your building, you just there's just heat in the building from all the other businesses running their heat, that maybe you don't even have to run your heat, or maybe don't have to run it in the exercise room or something. And you may just naturally stay in the low 60-degree range or Celsius and, towards that 15-degree range. It may just stay around there without running your heat. So you may have almost no heating costs in the winter too. So when you factor that and average it out, maybe you don't have such terrible utility costs as you might think.
Yeah, great point. Tim, there's certainly other things I want to cover with you as it relates to ideal exercise environment. One of those things, which again, we'll probably have to come on to next time, is attire, in terms of actually trainer attire, and as it relates to this, which I hadn't even thought about, and then equipment and mirrors and maybe some other things as well regarding the aesthetic of the studio. So I think that will definitely warrant a part 2, and hopefully in part 2 we'll also go on to cover exercise-induced headache and the rest of our agenda. But this has been amazing. Thank you so much as always. And just for those listening, do you want to just quickly mention the services that you can provide to help our colleagues?
Yeah, so, I can do a lot of different things for facility owners and even for individual trainers in terms of providing, whether that be sort of seminars or workshops or different educational opportunities to teach concepts of high intensity training and proper exercise, many different things that I can offer relative to equipment, teaching proper maintenance and care of equipment, or even discussing different modifications or retrofits that can be done with equipment, but also proper use of equipment. I think this is an area that's lacking with a lot of people in terms of not just how, whether you're performing a machine or an exercise correctly, but how to properly set it up. And, we've talked about the Med-X leg press and how complicated that is to really get the proper settings, So a lot of times I see videos of trainers and their clients are not correctly positioned, maybe not using a machine correctly in terms of the setup and the positioning, So all of that can be done. And I can do that either by people coming to my facility or me going to their facility, doing.
Would you be open to doing stuff remotely, Tim? Actually, via Zoom?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it with Zoom and these different video conferencing, possibilities, a lot of that, certainly a lot of the educational and the discussion and the philosophy and that kind of stuff could be done remotely. When it comes to a lot of the equipment work, that would probably be better done in person so you can really interact and see what's going on a little better. But yeah, a lot of this stuff could be done remotely that could save costs. And, basically I just will work with anybody and discuss their needs and what they would like to do and come up with a way that is going to best do that for their situation.
Great. Yeah. I think without Zoom, I would never have been able to get our business off the ground. I had so much help from our colleagues over the pond over there, helping me via Zoom in terms of how to use machines, how to set them up, how to instruct exercises on them, all of that stuff. Right. And at the end of this series, obviously, we're going to be doing a Q&A. and really answering all of the questions that were submitted over email, which there's been tons, which is great. So thank you so much to the listeners for that. And I'll just put a quick request out now. If anyone's interested in asking Tim a question about anything we discussed on this series, or anything regarding high-intensity training or running a personal training business, please email me, lawrence@highintensitybusiness.com, and I'll make sure we add that to a list for that Q&A episode, which will probably be in a couple episodes' time, because we're getting towards the end now. Me and Tim like to talk about topics for a very long time, so hence why the series has become quite long. And the reason I bring that up is because I had quite a couple of emails from people really raving on about your ability to modify equipment, and they sent me photos of different machines that you've helped modify, and that's something that I know a lot of our colleagues are really interested in getting the most out of their equipment. So again, if that's something you're interested in, Tim can really help with that among all the other services he's already mentioned. So just to repeat how they can get in touch with you about that, Tim. So it's info@stronglifetraining.com, or just go to stronglifetraining.com, and there's multiple ways to contact you, right? If people are interested in that.
Yep, exactly.
Tim, thanks so much. And for everyone listening, to find the blog post for this episode, please go to highintensitybusiness.com and search for episode 385. And until next time, thank you very much for listening.
This episode is brought to you by Strength Portal. You need a single software platform that enables your trainers to deliver consistent, high-quality workouts, track client progress, and scale your business. The problem is you're still using pen and paper or basic spreadsheets to run your business, which leads to poor client experiences, inaccurate tracking, and prevents you from growing your business, making you feel frustrated. Strength Portal understand your challenge and have worked closely with the HIIT industry to create a software platform to manage and scale your niche business. You can integrate with MindBody, manage a standardized exercise and workout library for your team, track workouts effectively, and produce client reports at the click of a button. Strength Portal is used by multiple businesses in the high-intensity strength training community, namely Discover Strength, Smart Strength Austin, MedX Precision Fitness, and more. Starting with Strength Portal is super simple. Number 1, sign up for the best package for your business. Number 2, let Strength Portal take the load off and help onboard your business onto the platform. And number 3, start delivering consistent workout experiences and scale your business to the next level. To help support the podcast, please go to strengthportal.com/high-intensity business and sign up now, so you can stop feeling frustrated about your business and start to scale your business to its true potential. Go to strengthportal.com/high-intensity business. Let's go.